It's time now for the final question. You'll each have 2 minutes to respond. Ralph Nader, you'll be first. Chuck Baldwin, you'll be second. And Congressman Barr, you'll have the last word. The current economic crisis has demonstrated that we live in a global economy. We've talked about NAFTA. We've talked about WTO. We haven't mentioned the fact that there's a 7% unemployment rate in Ohio right now, much higher here in Northeast Ohio, in double digits in Northeast Ohio. What role should the U.S. play in the global economy, and how can that role create more jobs here in Northeast Ohio and in other areas of the country? Ralph Nader.
First, I believe in community self-reliance economically to the most practical extent. That is, to the extent that we can grow our food closer to where we eat it, rather than importing it from China, which is increasingly contaminating exports to the U.S., like fish and other products, the better off we are. The extent we can produce our own energy through wind power and through water power and solar energy and energy efficiency, a barrel of oil you don't waste is one you don't have to import, the better off we are. To the extent we have community health clinics and cooperatives, and we not only deal with treatment and diagnosis, but exercise and good nutrition, the better off we are. Globalization stretches the line of supplies all over the world, which makes us excessively dependent. You know, something happens in Hong Kong, it affects us. Something happened here, it affects London. Something that happens in the Middle East affects us. That is an unhealthy form of dependency, and it's only going to get greater. And the more we depend on corporate globalization and longer lines of supply, etc., the less self-reliant we're going to be, and the more dependent we'll be on global corporations that have no allegiance to our country anymore, other than to control it or ship its jobs and industries to fascist and communist regimes like China, who know how to keep workers in their place, don't they? I think the key thing here is we've got to have a national debate, which we didn't have this year, on economic policy, on where we put our tax dollars, on where we put our savings, on where we put the protections for our workers, consumers, and taxpayers. That is essential, because democracy is of, by, and for the people for a good reason. And that reason is that when people decide the future of their lives through representative, accountable government and through their own personal choices, we're going to have a better country all around for our children and grandchildren to inherit, but not to have corporate supremacists subordinate the sovereignty of the people.
Ralph Nader, thank you very much. Chuck Baldwin.
Thank you, Dan. I grew up not too far from here in northern Indiana, and from 1971 to 1973 I worked at the General Motors truck and coach assembly line plant just outside Detroit, Michigan, Plant 5 to be exact. When I was there, the economy was robust, unemployment was virtually unknown. It was a wonderful place to work and live. I went back to that same neighborhood just a few weeks ago on the campaign trail. The plant I used to work at no longer exists. It's been torn down. Most of the plants in that area have been torn down. The jobs are now in Mexico, China, and India. People are working 2 and 3 jobs just trying to make a living. Unemployment is unreasonable. And the reason for this is because back in the 1990s, President Bill Clinton and together to bring NAFTA into existence. Since then, we've got CAFTA, we've got the WTO, we've got GATT, we've got FTAA on the horizon, and we've talked about some of these things already. It is absolutely essential that we bring our work home to America. What I would like to do is, after we have expunged the IRS and the 16th Amendment and the Federal Reserve, and we've slashed federal spending, I would like to get rid of the Department of Education, for example, and all those departments that Newt Gingrich promised to get rid of back in 1994 when Bob came to Congress, and then they didn't do it. I would like to eliminate those same federal departments, slash spending, and then I would like to implement an across-the-board general 10% tariff on all imports coming into the United States that make up the difference. What this would do, it would bring our jobs back home. It would bring our manufacturing back home. It would put Ohioans back to work. It would put Hoosiers back to work and Michiganders back to work. It would bring prosperity back to our country again, and we would once again lead the world in prosperity and productivity. All we need is an administration that will put America first, and that's what Chuck Baldwin will do.
Thank you very much, sir. Congressman Barr.
Thank you. If that question had been posed, which unfortunately it wasn't in one of the other debates, to Senator McCain and Senator Obama or Senator Biden and Governor Palin, the response would have been a laundry list of ways the federal government, through the heavy hand of either federal money or federal regulation, could bring jobs to a particular area. The bailout is a perfect example. As a matter of fact, what the federal government needs to be doing is getting out of the way. They need to start reducing some of the ridiculous regulations, such as the CAFE standards, that are dramatically harming our automobile industry and aren't helping pollution. They're not helping gas mileage and reducing our dependence on foreign oil at all. That's an example of a regulation that has actually become counterproductive. Yes, our companies and our people do operate in a global economy, but my concern as president, first and foremost, is the economy in the United States of America, to begin freeing it up. And in so doing, we will indirectly make America more competitive in the global marketplace by loosening the shackles that are tying American companies down, costing them tremendous amounts of money, lost wages, lost employees, lost inventory, and lost markets overseas. We need to be making America more competitive once again by reducing what government has done in the past. That is what is holding us back. And we need to get a handle on federal spending. When you have nearly $500 billion that our government has to pay every year just for the interest on the national debt, that is money taken out of the productive economy. We need to get that money back into the productive economy by reducing government spending.
Congressman Barr, thank you. Ralph Nader, thank you. Chuck Baldwin, thank you. This has been a fascinating debate. I think more for the similarities that you gentlemen and in positions that you gentlemen share than for the differences, some of which were expected. But I thank you for a vigorous debate, and I thank the City Club as well for hosting this debate. Now turn it over to City Club's Ralph De La Rada.